Hi, everybody. Really good to see you all. I know many of you well, and happy to be visiting with you. I hope it's okay if I'm fairly conversational, and you should all feel free to interrupt me and ask me questions. I prefer that kind of exchange and to make sure I'm answering what you're interested in hearing about. But so I am Christine Chandler. I've lived in Los Alamos for over 30 years, and prior to becoming your state legislator in 2019, I was on the council and did a lot of things in the community, so I feel like I have a good handle on what's happening here, and I continue to be involved, of course. I also represent, in addition to Los Alamos County, a little part of Sandoval County that includes like Jemez Springs and Ponderosa. I used to have Rio Arriba County until we redistricted, so I don't have Cuba. Well, Cuba's in Sandoval, but I don't have Coyote anymore, and I had some of those little places out there which were very interesting little communities. I have Santa Fe County that is La Cienega, so it's that area around the airport, kind of down now through the racetrack, which is now being demolished, yay, and hopefully will be redeveloped, and some neat things will happen there. That's owned by Pewaukee Pueblo. If you didn't know that, they picked that up, and they have plans to redevelop it with some kind of commercial activity and the like. I am the chair of the House Judiciary Committee, and I have been the chair of that committee for, I think, about 3 years now. And prior to that, I was chair of Taxation and Revenue. I continue to serve on Taxation and Revenue, and it's an area that I'm very interested in, tax policy. But somehow or another, I got enlisted to take on House Judiciary. I have a little handout that, you're welcome. This isn't everything we did, obviously. I like to keep it to two pages, otherwise it gets a little cumbersome. So I try to boil it down to things that I'm interested in, or I think you might be interested in, or I think that are important. So we just had a 60-day session. That means we got to consider any topic that we deemed important, as opposed to a 30-day session, which is a topic that the governor deems important or financial. So it's the budget, maybe taxes, and then what the governor wants to talk about. Not a system many of us are happy about. And we continue to try to adjust it and with amendments and the like, and they often don't go anywhere. The one constitutional amendment that relates to the governor's authority has to do with her ability to pocket veto. And I imagine most of you know we are putting on the ballot a question that will eliminate her ability to do that. And it will require her to actually actively veto an item. Otherwise, it becomes law. So we inverted the process, okay? So I'm quite certain governors are going to be very attentive to vetoing bills explicitly, and they will be required through the Constitution to explain why. So we are all happy about that, because there were plenty of bills that were pocket vetoed, and so we're all wondering what was going on there. And, we all deserve an explanation. Given the amount of time it takes a bill to get through, it seems only right that the governor maybe has to spend a little bit of time thinking about why or at least giving us an explanation. It might be not the actual explanation, but it is an explanation. The budget continues to be strong, although I'm sure you all and we all are concerned about what's going on the federal government level and what that impact that will have on our revenues going forward. Of course, we may have to react to that maybe in the fall or maybe not. We do have a lot of reserves. We have a 30% reserve in the budget now. There are ways we can draw on funds to help mitigate, but that's not going to go on into infinity. We have to figure out infinity, I guess we should say. Infinity, not infinity, although they're kind of related in this case. So, yes, we're worried about Medicaid funding. That's a big thing that's coming up. And we have a significant amount of our budget is dedicated to Medicaid. That's for Medicaid is focused on helping poor people generally, with lower income people gain access to health care. And we're all committed to that, but it's a little disconcerting, to say the least, that we will have to maybe tackle that going forward. So we did, of course, give our employees increases, a 4% increase for state workers, 4% increase for teachers. We increased the amount per level for educators, so we increased them by $5,000. We're trying to keep salaries for educators competitive. It has helped us recruit, and we have data that shows that, and we want to continue to do that. We want to be competitive with our neighboring states so we can draw high-quality educators here. Child well-being and education, I talked a little bit about that just a second ago. I do want to point out that one topic that's been on our radar for a few years, well, actually, going back before I was in the legislature and moving, way back when Susana Martinez was in place and perhaps others, is how we deal with children who are in the care of CYFG or under the control of CYFD, and the role that CYFD plays. We did create finally an office of a child advocate that is attached to the Attorney General's office, and that is an office that will be responsible for investigating and monitoring and looking into issues associated with poor performance and potential abuse, that occurs through the CYFD process, and in an effort to try to hold more people accountable and the like. It's some of the stories that I'm sure you read about and we talk about in committee are heart-wrenching and very concerning to us, and getting a handle on that's difficult. No question about it, but we are trying to put some mechanisms in place. It's not a new issue. It's not new to this governor. It's been ongoing, and we're hoping to try to get a better handle on that. So you all, I'm sure, well, many of you, I'm sure, were aware the governor is very concerned about what she was referring to as criminal competency. It is an issue. I will say, to begin, the number of defendants in the criminal system that have competency issues is probably less than 5% of the cases. So, I want to give you a little perspective here, because there seem to be, from some of our perspectives, it is an issue, and I'll explain why. It seemed a little bit of a disproportionate response or interest, I guess you might say, from the governor's side. Why we were spending months talking about it. Not that it needed to be addressed, but we had a special session that was intended to address it. So let's step back. That's less than 5% of the cases, criminal cases. Okay, so we were going to have a special session on that. We were saying, no, we need to have a thoughtful approach to this, when we need to spend the time to understand what the scope of the problem is and have a thoughtful response. The governor was sending us various drafts, and they weren't well thought out, and we were saying, no, let's use the summer. We will have a meaningful discussion of it, and we'll have the legislature commits to taking it on. Our leadership commits to taking it on. We will have a proposal. We will get a proposal through, and we did. And I was chair of Courts, Corrections, and Justice this summer, so I had the great honor, privilege of being responsible for getting that done. And fortunately, we were able to do that, and we did create a bill. Now, so let's, I'm sure you're all not mired in the details of criminal competency. Is not a high priority issue in Los Alamos. It is an issue. Okay, so what's competency? It means the charged person cannot participate in their defense. They don't have the capacity to do that. Okay, so someone will raise competency. So the person might be charged with a misdemeanor or a low-level felony. Or the person might be charged with a very serious felony, one that involves violence, serious violence. And the way the system had been, and is still, but it will change, is if you were charged with a violent felony, and they're enumerated in the statute, what constitute you, and you were deemed not competent, you would be committed and you would be treated and brought to what we call restoration, an effort to bring you to a place where you could participate in your own defense.
You talk mental competency?
Yeah, mental. Yeah.
Physical?
Well, mental, not, I guess we didn't talk about emotional, but I assume there's a relationship between emotional and mental. It's a serious mental illness is what you're establishing. And then physical competence, no, that's different. So you would be committed, and so you're a violent person, and that's the right thing to do. We don't want people who are potentially dangerous on the streets and so on. But if you were charged with a low-level crime, like a misdemeanor, so that could be like disturbing the peace, or it could be trespass. People with serious mental illnesses, and frankly, many of them are homeless, are a little disruptive, but they're not dangerous, and they may have a serious mental illness that needs to be addressed, and we want them to get the treatment. That case would just be dismissed, period. Okay, that's the end of it. If you were deemed incompetent, the case was dismissed. We didn't get you treatment necessarily. You were just sent off. That is not, I agree with the government, that's not a good outcome. And maybe I have a different reason for thinking it's not, but because I want those folks to get treatment, right? So we created a structure that allows the DA to get outpatient treatment for that person. We created more pathways for people who are not dangerous, but we want to help, mostly. They could be charged if they're brought back to restoration, but they'll be charged with a misdemeanor, so that's a low-level thing, high unlikelihood, unless they're that they would be jailed, that kind of thing. But so that's what we came up with. We came up with a plan to work on those folks who are low-level criminals or crime, have been charged with a crime, so they can get some treatment. They might be restored, and we gave the DA the ability to do some of these, pursue some of these alternative pathways. Okay, so I felt good about where we came out. It's not perfect. Dealing with mental health and the criminal justice system is a very complicated, and it's always going to be imperfect. It's just hard. But we are trying to build up the system in the courts. Access to care. We created a behavioral health fund. We are investing over $100 million in our budget this year to build up our behavioral health system in both facilities that will be regional, as well as trying to bring in more providers. So it's going to take a while, though. This is not something that happens overnight. Yes?
Does that include the addicts?
Yes, there is also, because of course, there's also relationship potentially, in some cases, for mental health and addiction, because people are self-medicating. So yes, it will. And we are also, part of the plan is to develop some form of housing. You can't treat people while they're on the streets. You can, and we will, but it's much more effective, obviously, if they have a place to reside, because you need to be touching base with them, and if you can't find them, obviously that's an impediment. There will be case managers who will be responsible for helping to get these people to their appointments and the like, because the person has a mental illness. They may not have capacity to take responsibility for some of these things. So, Maura.
So, Chris, with the courts being involved in this, how will they connect the people who need? Will it be through the pretrial probation like they do for drug?
There will be coordinators. There will be coordinators. And I do want to commend the courts because they really stepped up to work with us. And they have shown a great interest in developing staff positions and things like that, you know, the things that you need, the infrastructure that you need to be able to administer their program. And they have actually people now, and they will get more people who coordinate a lot of these behavioral health related items. And so yes, and so, you know, it's going to be a work in progress. There will be things that will come up that we might have to amend in law because we don't know exactly, you know. And I just had a call today with there's a group at UNM that teaches forensic psychology. Right. The staff, really. I just met them last year, and they're going to expand, and they're going to bring in more forensic psychologists to help on this program. And we talked about some of the issues already, and one of which, of course, is we now have to pay them more because we're asking them to do more. Because what we're going to ask the forensic psychologists to do is not only determine competency, but also evaluate them on the behavioral level. So we know if they're going to be amenable to treatment and what that treatment might be, and so on. So we're going on beyond just competency. We're asking the psychologists to provide more information that could be used if we want to put them in assisted outpatient treatment, which, by the way, is not a voluntary program. It is, you are directed, you have to go. It's hard to enforce, admittedly, but it is not a voluntary program. It is where you are directed to get treatment. And we wanted to create the necessary documentation right at the start instead of adding extra layers of bureaucracy, because you have to bring the person in every time you evaluate them. So that's one more kind of, I don't know how to call it annoyance. You know, it's an impediment. It makes it harder. It slows the process down, all of those things. So we expanded what the report's going to say about this person. So it will not just be limited. It's not an up or down, competent, incompetent. If it's going to have expanded information in it so that the judge and the prosecutors and others have a better way to assess what they should do with the individual. So, you know, Becky.
So I have a question because you keep hearing about how much trouble CYFD is having with staff.
Right.
Now, you know, you're talking about psychiatrists or psychologists.
Yeah.
Do we have enough? How do we really get them?
Okay. Well, for this program, I can't say we're going to have them for everybody, but like I said, I just had a call an hour ago with the forensic people at UNM because I wanted to find out, you know, what can I do to help to make sure this is implemented. And there's a new guy who's starting on May, but he's already been participating from his home state of Florida. He's coming in. He says he has recruited 19 forensic type psychologists to work on this kind of stuff. Will they all be here physically? Not necessarily all 100% of the time. But he says they will be available to support this program and presumably other programs where these kinds of skills are needed. So he is working already on that piece. So I was very frankly optimistic when I was talking with these UNM folks. And it's like, thank you for taking this seriously, and thank you for trying to make the program a success. And please tell me if I need to do something, if you're getting barriers from, you know, the various administrative offices, or you need more money, or there's something in the law that we now are finding isn't workable, because that could be, as you know, it's a new program, and we're amenable to trying to amend things and change things to make, you know, but we're going to learn. But it was really challenging, you know, I'll be honest, and I was scared there for a while. I wasn't going to be able to come up with something that people could get their arms around, and I'm pleased that the forensic folks thinks it's a workable program at UNM. And I'm pleased the governor was happy with it because she had a lot of very definite ideas about things. And she seemed okay. And the Senate, I worked closely with Senator Cervantes on this, and he was okay. So, you know, it's kind of a rare thing, but I can say that all three entities were on board generally. And, you know, you have to be receptive to input, and we were. And I'm pleased with the outcome and proud of the work that I had a great attorney working with me. It's not just me. I had a staff attorney that the speaker assigned who has a background in criminal law, which I do not. And so she, Megan Dorsey, and if anyone needs a criminal lawyer, she's in private practice. She's great. And a nice, young, bright attorney who I really enjoyed working with. And I want to give her credit because she was fantastic. Let's see. The other things that I worked on is I worked on improving our red flag law, Extreme Risk Order Protection Act. There were some changes law enforcement sought that would give them a little more authority in seeking a petition to have firearms removed if there's a suspicion that the person is a danger to themselves or others. I just want to point out, it's not just a suspicion. You have to get a court order before you can remove the firearms, and then there are 10 days after the removal, after the order is served, where the person has the ability to challenge the right of the law enforcement to retrieve and hold the firearm. So just want to emphasize that because a lot of things are said about gun laws that aren't correct. So let's see, what else that can I touch on? We are working on allocating monies to expand affordable housing. I think we allocated something like $45 million in the budget to work on those kinds of problems and issues, and to particularly with the aim of addressing homelessness in the state. The original appropriation was directed at the three big counties, Doñana, Bernalillo, and I guess Santa Fe, and the governor struck out those designations, so thereby giving her the discretion as to where those monies go. There's a little bit of frustration that I'm sure you're starting to pick up on in terms of how we are working together and in some ways not working together. I feel like the House and the Senate has been very circumspect in their public criticisms of some of the governor's activities, and I have a feeling that's going to change. Because it's just gotten too much where it's somehow the legislature is responsible for all things that are going wrong in the state. And frankly, I'm very proud of a lot of the work that we've been doing. There's definitely room for improvement. This year we tried to work on some things that would strengthen tenant rights, just on the margins, really, on some things, and mobile home parks. So this is a bill I really like. The mobile home parks are great for low-income people, and there are a lot of seniors in mobile home parks. Okay, so we have one over here, and I get complaints periodically about how how people are being treated, and inequities, and so on. So and they're often now being sold to private equity firms. So mobile home parks are going into that corporate world. And unfortunately, the service associated with that corporate world isn't always the best. So the bill that was being proposed, I wasn't a sponsor, but I definitely tried to work to help it along, was it would allow the residents first right of refusal. So they could, form a cooperative and run the park themselves. And, if they could get financing, it's not for free. It's something they'd have to meet the offer of the other company or whatever that was looking at it. But it would give, they'd have to do it within 90 days and things like that. Got it through the House. I'm very proud of some of that work that we've been doing to try to help, got stalled in the Senate, unfortunately, and I think some of you can guess where. So, we are a bit frustrated with that. I had lunch with the speaker yesterday. We were kind of going through some of our priority bills that didn't get hearings in the Senate, and it's frustrating because some of our landlord-tenant bills that and they were not like crazy, you know what I mean? Like it wasn't, it was all stuff that was really designed to just target certain things that were a problem. There was a junk fee bill that did get through. It was a Senate bill that will prohibit junk fees placed on tenants. Because the way it happens some places, and I don't want to denigrate all landlords, is the rent, there are hidden rents because there is a fee for this and a fee for that and a fee for this. So, and you've seen these in other contexts, and it just increases the cost for the person, right? And it's really just another form of rent. It's just a hidden rent. There was a bill that we passed in the House that would have capped increases for mobile home park rents to 3% and then 5% for a 2-year period so that we could get a handle on what's going on. That would give us some breathing room to the tenants, and it would give the legislature a little time to figure out how to address this problem. But so think about it. You own a mobile home. It depreciates unlike real estate, right? So you've got a depreciating asset, and you're evicted, or the rent goes up so high you can't afford to stay there anymore. But you can't afford to move your mobile home because it costs about $15,000 to move a mobile home. So you're a hostage to the mobile home park. That's the one that breaks my heart. Of course, I care about other tenancies and people are at risk, but it is really putting people in a very difficult spot, and we need to get our arms around it. And so, I'm very committed to trying to work with my colleagues on trying to get some of these landlord-tenant things so that there's a shortage of housing that gives landlords leverage. They're not worrying about whether they're going to get another tenant because they are going to get another tenant. So, anyway, I'm going to get off my soapbox, sorry. But it's been on my mind. I was, sorry. Oh, well, great. Good. I'm going to be coverage here. So I won't talk anymore. I'm sure you all have a lot of, I hope you have a lot of questions because those are always fun and challenging for me. Colleen.
Yes, I'm wondering, what do you have to do officially with San Alfonso? Is it part of Santa Fe County? Is it part of here?
Yeah.
How do you deal with San Alfonso?
San Ildefonso is not in my district. It is in Santa Fe County. Representative Andrea Romero represents San Ildefonso. To be truthful with you, I have very little engagement with San Ildefonso. Pojoaque, on the other hand, is a presence at the legislature, and I view them in a way as a constituency because they own the racetrack, which is in my district. So I interact with them, truthfully, more than San Ildefonso. So very little. Is there a specific issue you're concerned about with San?
Talk about the district.
Yeah.
Then it affects, because San Alfonso has quite a bit to do with that.
Yes, they have, well, in a way yes, they do, in that the lab has to be conscious of the environmental impact it has on San Ildefonso lands, for sure. And there are, I think, there's something like the 8 Northern Pueblo Corporation. There's a corporation, a Native American corporation. I don't know if Sani is part of that. I know Wenge is. My observation about the Pueblos is some are more, business-oriented or entrepreneurial than others. And that's well within their, prerogative, right? And so, choice. But Pojoaque obviously is very entrepreneurial. Yes, Don.
You mentioned enhance the teacher salary to be competitive. Do you know what the average increase salary for our neighboring states are versus ours?
I know that information exists. Do I have it in my brain cells? No, but I could get it. I mean, that's definitely information that LES. Yes, we are, and actually. We were doing better after we did the last bump up, and then they started bumping. So now we are competitive. We weren't always. It was only like within the last 5 years or so that we started really focusing on that. Yeah.
Was that university level as well?
Oh, no. I feel that we are not doing a good job in terms of how we pay our university professors and a lot of things associated with the university. There is we have to deal with the region. Don't get me started on the University of Mexico. I definitely need to be bolstering university salaries, and looking at their policies, the whole thing about using too many adjuncts and using them as kind of almost low cost labor, and it's not right. Don?
I served on the board of regents for one of our institutions. I saw a situation where the foundation ended up approving $500,000 for the president 5 years in advance.
Oh, well, Don, I don't know when that happened, but just go look at Western University. you don't need an old example. I got one right for you here.
Is there any thought to having a board of regents for all of the institutions? One board of regents for all of them. It would be.
Well, that's a blessing. Maybe it is. Maybe yes and maybe no. Why, you don't know that. What if it's a one board it's horrible? That means it's horrible for all of them. I'm just saying. Just think about that. Yeah. And I think, frankly, we have too many universities. I'm going to say something controversial. Maybe not. We've got, Highlands, which is fine, but then Highlands has a branch campus in Rio Rancho. Oh, yeah. So, and then, so we have these, and all these little, and then they compete against each other, and it's I'm not sure the resources are well used when you have such a diffuse.
Especially in the metropolitan area.
Yeah, that's right, too.
Where you have rural areas that have long distances between.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Because, you need to be conscious of the fact you want to make it easy for rural folks to get access to an education. So we probably need maybe the 2-year schools and so on in some of the more isolated. I'm not an expert on education, so part of this is just sort of my chatting with friends, and my own kind of worldview about some of this stuff. But yeah, I take your point, but it could be not so good. For your example, we have Western University, went to Joe Shepard, and the board was basically in his pocket and gave him all kinds of golden parachutes, and he's quote, going to be teaching, but it's all, by the way, it's remote teaching. He's not going to be on campus. I wonder how accountable he's going to be for those remote teaching classes. And yeah, that was our latest scandal on how the administration dominates sometimes the board of regents, but anyway, I have issues with UNM. I'm super happy with how their forensic people are working, obviously. So, but there are issues with those guys as well in terms of how they pay and treat their staff, how they pay and treat their doctors, because they run medical facility, and not just their doctors, their staff. Yes, June.
Yeah, 2 questions. Is the effective advocacy of the state and federal legislators? One, I wondered about for long term. How are you effective if you're lucky enough that your state and federal representatives already vote your values?
That's right.
And then the second one related to that is it appropriate to try to advocate for, say, other members that are on the committee that aren't even Democrats?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Obviously, I hope I'm reasonably accessible to you folks, but I think it's often helpful if you know a bill that's in committee, just don't write to me, because you're mostly likely to be aligned with me, and not 100% necessarily, because you all probably aren't aligned with each other on everything, right? So why should I be? But go to all the committee members and the Republicans too. I work well with my Republican my committee members, really well. My ranking member, I meet once a week about what bills have been sent to my committee and what she wants to see. Usually I expect her to tell me what the Republican priorities are. It's my job to figure out what the Democrat priorities are. But she lets me know if there's a bill that somebody wants and so on.
And who is that?
That is Reeb, Andrea Reeb from Clovis. And she's a prosecutor. And she's, easy to work with, I'll say, and bright. and knows certainly criminal law really well, which I don't, so that's a useful thing. She has a different worldview from me about how criminal law should be applied and stuff, but, that's all part of the situation. You expect that. But I have great Republican members on my committee, and we all get along very well. We don't have a lot of nonsense going on. Once in a while, they have to posture for something they're mad about, and we go through that, and that's fine. And that we move on to the next thing. But yeah, I think you should talk to any member on the committee about whatever. And I get emails from people who aren't definitely in my district. I will tell you, I make a mental note. District, not district. Oh, I do. Because I got to listen to somebody, and it's district, not district. That's going to be part of the information that I'm factoring in. Well, yeah, I work for you guys, but of course, statewide, we all have to be concerned about statewide things, and so there's a balance. I spend a lot of time on low-income stuff, guys. If you look at my bills, that's not you. But I feel I'm helping. And frankly, it helps everybody when we don't have poverty. It helps us well-off, middle class, upper middle class people. Poverty is not good. It undermines the social fabric, and that is bad for everybody. Lisa.
Thank you for all you do. It's just
Thank you.
My question is about the behavioral trust fund, health trust fund. First of all, did it pass? Is it enacted? And secondly, how are entities, organizations, counties, and so forth able to access that money? Is there a process or management of it that's existing now, or does that have to happen?
That has to happen. With the funding is being put in place, and the processes will be developed to identify areas of need and the like. So yeah, the bill just passed a month ago. Around the same time we did the crime package. The public safety package. We okay, there are two prongs. There are probably more than two, but the big prongs are public safety, behavioral health, and addiction. Right? They're all interrelated. We need to view them as interrelated. And not everybody does, by the way. But actually, I will say that was a bipartisan effort. It will. My colleagues on the other side definitely recognize the need for treatment. So, Lisa, and then I'll go to you.
Just one follow-up on that. So will they establish a committee or a group or a study, or will they have a special?
Truthfully, I do not know. There won't be a special session. There will be people whose job it is to look at behavioral health and come up with proposals, and we'll move forward based on that. But there won't be a special. So I will look into what the plan is going forward, so I can be more articulate and informed, Lisa. So, yeah, it is good. Ed, Don. Don, we're going to have to let other people talk.
Trade legislature, what can you say about it?
Get stalled in the Senate.
Why?
God only knows. I have a lot of cynical explanations as to why. There are individuals who don't feel the need to get paid, and they feel the kind of high level, we're doing it for the public, we are. The righteous answer is we are here public servants, and we do not need to be paid. The other reasons, are probably the ones that aren't articulated publicly. Is some people don't need the money, and some people would prefer that competition not be introduced into the mix. Fortunately, we do have some younger members in the House, and there were some younger members elected this last round in the Senate, but all those folks have jobs, and it's really a struggle for them to have to juggle. Some people are still working, like they carve out a few hours a day to do work online. Leo, our senator, he still has to, he gets up at 4 a.m. and stuff. He has a period of time from our Senator Jaramillo, our senator, he he works from 4 to something, and then, he gets some time off, but the lab used to be much more accommodating in terms of in being in the legislature and stuff. That changed, I think, when they went kind of private. And well, I will say this, part of it's driven by DOE, so I don't want to be saying pejorative things about the contractor. A lot of the policies that are in place that happen are driven by what DOE is dictating. But Ed, that's why the House members, we pass it just about every year, and then it goes over the Senate and it stalls. And this one, I think, was to create a commission that would set the salaries, because people don't want us setting our own salaries and that kind of thing. So there would be some way that would have some independence over what we got paid or whatever. So I share your frustration. Mainly not for me, but for the like I said, there are young people in the legislature. There's a 28-year. There are a couple 28-year-olds. They have to work. Hi, yes, Ed.
You mentioned your frustration with the session. That is literally stepping stone. Session length can't change.
Yeah. Well, session length would have to have a constitutional amendment, right? And there have been proposals to do that, and those also stall. And I will say, in talking with some members who have, I think this is a legitimate issue. We need to address session length, because the concern is, and salary first. That's right. How did this work out? Salary first, because what if we extend the session length to 2 months every year or something? And that's even worse, right? Because that's even more of a drag on the folks who have jobs, to be called in and they don't even get compensated for it, right? That would be bad. If we extended the session lengths. I've been working on AI stuff. So as a result of working on AI stuff, I've been talking with other state legislators, because there's a statewide, multi-state working group on AI. And I don't mean expanding AI. I mean not denigrate, but how do we regulate it, right? Because it impacts us. There are privacy things associated with AI and actually just computer stuff in general. What they're mining info on all of us. Where you drive, many of our cars, unless you're, a die-hard 25-year, you've had your car for 25 years. If you have a new car, you are being tracked, right? And what are they doing with that information?
Giving you advertising.
Well, and they have the ability to sell that information. There's no regulations on that. So there was a privacy bill this year. I signed on to it. I'm very interested in that and how it interacts with other AI stuff, predictive AI. I'm not into generative yet. So I was talking to some of these legislators, and we talk, because nobody's going to do anything national, right? Really, this should be regulated nationally. A lot of these things should, but nobody's doing it. And oops, sorry, I don't know why I had an alarm go off. But some of them are still in session. Connecticut, I'm talking to the senator from Connecticut. We're not out until June. So they start January, they're not out till June. Colorado's not out for another month. They start around the same time we do. So the world has gotten more complex since, is it 1912 we became a state? So, people get frustrated when I suggest we maybe even longer than 60 days. But I'm looking at, Colorado's more, right? They're still in session. Connecticut's still in session. There are other states that are probably still in session. And, California, I think, is 24 all the time, as far as I can tell. And so, just to compare. And yeah, maybe we don't have as a complex as, Connecticut. They have an incredible economy and stuff. But certainly, I think sometimes we need more time to get, 60 days. I had 384 bills referred to my committee this year.
Wow.
384. So if you hear complaints about a bill I didn't hear, now you know why. So, yes, Maura.
So how are legislators liking having a staff member?
Oh, yeah. I should talk about that. So I have now a district aide that I got in October. Yay, it was great. And her name is Laurel Minter, and she's super. So people are liking it. You know, it's not perfect. I don't have an office for her, and it's, you know, she did work with me during the session. She was in my office just about every day, and so she's in my office, you know, in my office, because we don't have space. But it is great, and she's helping me stay on top of my emails more and my scheduling. And she also has 2 master's degrees. I got really lucky given the amount of money we're paying these people. And so it helps me with my bills, you know, like the substantive part of my bills, following up on amendments that we're working on and telling me what's going on with that, can do substantive work. People use them differently. I wanted somebody I could have an intelligent conversation with about the bill, you know, because I need people to like bounce ideas off of, and is this right or whatever, and keep me straight and follow up and all this. Others really want people who are just more administrative, and that's fine. And some only want 20 hours a week person, and we can do that. So that people are thrilled to have the support. It was a huge help to me managing my committee, trying to get some heavy bills through, and having Laurel just watching everything. Oh, you got to present your bill in the Senate today, this afternoon. I'd forget that. You know, you're running around. Did I miss something? The bill's on the agenda. I got to run over there. Here's your folder. Here are your talking points. It has my stuff all organized. You have no idea what a help that is. Instead of me saying, where's that file and where's the paper and what am I going to say about you know, she's got it all right there on my folder. It's like so great. So even that is like paying me, really, you know. So, sorry, I'm blithering on. Jody.
A comment and a question. One's procedural and one's policy. And the procedural question is, I have gone to the sessions hoping to get into a committee, but the committees are being, and I would call it, they're being waylaid by comments, endless comments in the sessions rather than the committee, so people can't let you out. For example, in the session when they were voting on, and I think this might have been your bill, about turning prisons into ICE facilities.
Oh yeah, I was on that.
He never stopped, and it never went to committee, and we simply left. And this was Robert Montoya from Farmington. And he was doing friendly amendments. So I was wondering if there was any way to shut these people up.
You mean a legislator was talking a lot?
In the House floor.
Oh, Rob Montoya. I was like, okay, sorry. I was like, what? Wait.
So that's a procedural question. And then the policy question, you might have addressed it before, but I'm confused about what happened with tort reform for medical practices.
Okay.
So those two.
All right. So it's very hard to limit the speech of a legislator. In our chamber, and it's not true of the Senate, we have different rules. You can debate a bill for up to 3 hours. You could do it for more, but what happens is we time them. I can tell you, we time them. Believe me, I'll say, how much more do we have on this bill? It's been forever. So Rod can speak basically as long as he wants, up to 3 hours. The speaker may try to manage, if it gets repetitive, well, yeah, he manages that to some degree, but it's real hard. You know, it's real hard to tell a legislator they got to be quiet. And we have the 3 hour rule. So if he's squeezing out his colleagues, that's the way it is. Now, usually on a Democratic bill, we don't, our members debate it some, but they don't drag it on. Because they know we want to get the bill off the floor. It's just a tactic, really, Jody. It just slows down the legislative process. It's a tactic. So on bills they really don't like, they will use the full 3 hours. So a bill that could have really been an hour's worth of debate and should have only been an hour's worth of debate will be 3 hours. So that means 2 other bills didn't get heard. And their goal is to stop as many bills as possible, right? So that's part of the reason why if it's a bill they really don't like, even if it's a bill they do like, but they want to slow down the process for another bill that's coming up, right? They will debate a bill for 3 hours or 2 hours, even if it's a simple bill. I mean, that's just a strategy. When you're in the minority, you have limited tools. So I'm not being critical, because if we're ever in the minority, which I hope will never happen again, we will do the same thing. So I'm not, it's just that they have limited tools. They're in the minority. They don't get to set priorities. We try to accommodate them. I do on my committee, and the speaker works with the leadership. We have generally cordial floor sessions. Wouldn't you agree this year? There were times when I first came in, it was ugly. We are getting along, and we try to accommodate legitimate needs of theirs. If they're not crazy bills, that they have a legitimate purpose. And they have some good bills. I'm not trashing. Like I said, we're working together reasonably well. There's an opposition. That's what opposition parties do. That's okay. They shouldn't be mean about it, and sometimes they are, and that kind of thing. And, tort reform. Okay. So there are two things that were going on. There were the compacts that I got a lot of feedback on, and then there was a med-mal reform bill that was carried by Dr. Hickey, basically. The Dr. Hickey bill, I think, died in, I think it was public affairs. It wasn't judiciary. Did not get enough traction. I think it was too expansive myself. Maybe there are some things that we can do on the med-mal front, but I think he was taking on too much. I think we should look at punitive damages. I think that's a reasonable thing to be looking at, somehow capping them or having some. I did say to a trial lawyer, I said, it's kind of hard to justify a $300 million punitive damage award. No matter how egregious the behavior was. And it was egregious. The person lost the use of his penis. And I'm being straight with you. So that it was an egregious thing, and it was outrageous what was told to the person and what was done to the person, as explained to me. But it's still hard to get my head around $300 million for a 65-year-old man. So, I do get that piece. I don't agree with the capping attorney's fees. We capped attorney's fees in workers' comp when we started losing attorneys. And if you are injured in a workers' comp case and you can't find an attorney, that's a big deal, potentially, especially if it's a really serious injury. So, but there are some things I think we could do on that front. So we'll probably have some conversations over the summer in interim committees about what's reasonable and what's not. I think other things should be done to try to get doctors here. I think we need to look at the tuition assistance piece. Most doctors have big debt loads when they come out of medical school. I think that's I think it's more effective to get doctors in the state. And actually there are papers that are written on what's effective. If you want young doctors here, new early entry or maybe mid-career, I don't know how long it takes to pay off $250,000 or whatever your debt is, but it's significant, I think, for some people. I think that's an effective thing to be looking at and expanding on, trying to help with tuition assistance. And what you get in return is they have to stay in the state practicing for an X period of time, or they'll have to pay back some proportion of what the assistance was or something. There's a way to structure these, so I think there are things like that we should be looking at.
Did we get the compact?
Well, the compacts went through the House, and most of them got through. They got stalled again in the Senate.
Huh.
Yeah, I think virtually all of them got through the House. And I also think that the benefits of those are exaggerated too, but I thought, okay, well, I think they're harmless, so okay, we'll get them through. They're not, I don't think they're the great boon that they're being represented to be, but they'll be helpful to some degree and hopefully not too harmful. Because I'll point out to you, if we're a member of the compact, our doctors can leave. Our doctors have it easier to practice elsewhere. So keep that in mind when people talk about the compact. We're not we are going this way and that way. So what's the net going to be? Is it going to be net up or is it going to be net down? Nobody talks about it in those terms, but that's what it is. And it's the doctors, it's a physical therapist, it's nurses compact's been in place for 20 years. We have a nursing shortage, have you noticed? So, fine, if it helps a little bit, that's great, but I don't expect them to have a huge, impact on access to medical care. It's not. If you have a doctor in Arizona, which I do, because I had my neck surgery done in Arizona, yeah, I do telemedicine, but I do it now. So one of the selling points was, well, this will enhance our ability to have telemedicine, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, that's fine. That's what's being purported. I have a doctor in Arizona. I have telemedicine with him. So what's the barrier? I don't get it. Yeah. Okay, well, yeah, but people have been selling it as something that's going to advance telemedicine. And I'm like, okay, if that's true, fine, but I'm already doing telemedicine. Ed?
You have an existing relationship. Initial consultations can't be initiated without.
Okay, sure, that's great. We have a telemedicine law in place to that you apply to be, recognized through, there is a telemedicine approval process in place now. It's fine. But don't expect like great wonders because if a compact gets through. We have a nursing compact in place, been in place for 20 years. We still have a nursing shortage, folks. So just, keep that in mind, perspective.
It's a bad situation now for getting surgeons, and you can't do any telemedicine with them. They have 2 surgeons up here at the hospital that are locum doctors.
Yeah.
And then Dr. Green gave up surgery and is now working for them.
Right,
so
right. No. Yeah. But the compact's not going to,
no,
fine.
exactly.
It's not going to solve that.
It's like that.
But, it helps, I guess. And that's what everybody's telling me. Okay. I have doubts. But.
I'm going to, because I was late starting, so let me give you a couple extra minutes. Maybe like one more.
I'm happy to stop. I know I talk too much.
Okay, stop.
Anyway, thank you.